Hello and welcome to Fur, Fins, and Feathers. This is our 80th episode, and today we have two 4-H leaders. Extension educators, correct?
Yes.
Ladies,
Thank you.
welcome to our show.
Thank you for having us.
You are?
I'm Cathy Acampora, and I am from Plymouth County.
And you are?
My name is Meg Riley, and I'm the agricultural educator for Plymouth County Extension 4-H also.
Very good. You both play an important role in helping people to learn about animals, animal safety, etc. You've got a very important message with spring coming.
Yeah, so it's really awesome that the grass is starting to green up and people are excited to get back outside again. And a couple of things to kind of keep in mind as people are getting outside. A lot of farms are like opening up their doors and they're inviting people in for springtime. And so you might be doing something like a farm tour, a farm birthday party, putting your kids into a farm camp program. And these are all so important because one of the things that we do as part of our job is that we're trying to connect people to agriculture in lots of different ways. We're seeing a decline in young people getting into agriculture. So
why is that?
Well, you know what, I think a couple of things. I think one of the things that we're up against is that there's just kind of like some outdated stereotypes about what a farmer looks like. I mean, I'm a farmer. Am I what you picture for a farmer? A lot of people picture, a guy on a tractor with a piece of straw hanging out of his mouth, right? And that couldn't be farther from the truth. So one of the things is that we really want people to get out and to explore their local farms. It's also a great time to buy local products that are made locally. We were just talking about locally made ice cream, which is one of your favorite topics, Brian.
Obviously.
Exactly, you're talking about that. So one of the things is that when you are going to a farm, you should always keep in mind how to keep yourself and your family safe. So a couple of things, right now what's going on in the state of Massachusetts, which everybody in agriculture is talking about, is the highly pathogenic avian influenza. So
what is that?
So unfortunately, what's been happening is that there was a strain of a bird flu that has been traveling up the East Coast. It's been moving with migratory birds, mostly geese. And then their droppings are unfortunately infecting like people's backyard poultry. And it can make them really sick, and it even has the potential to be zoonotic, which when we say zoonotic, that's something that could jump from an animal, could jump to a person, which there haven't been any cases, thankfully, in the United States that have done that yet. But right now, there's been a lot of advisories for people who even keep just a few chickens in their backyard to be extra safe with their birds. And right now, it is requested that people are keeping their birds in quarantine until May.
Okay.
So a couple things is when you go to a farm, first of all, you want to make sure that it's a farm that is welcoming people. Sometimes you might see a sign that says no trespassing or like, please don't touch these animals. And I know from working on farms for close to 20 years that sometimes people, they think that sign doesn't apply to them. In reality, the farmer could be putting up these educational signs to keep you safe from an animal that's not feeling so good. So even a healthy animal can sometimes carry either like a bacteria, a virus, a parasite that you don't want to take home with you from your farm experience. So a few things is, first of all, most farms, they're very much in the know of how they want to keep their visitors as safe and healthy as possible. So oftentimes you'll see signs that say like, wash your hands before you leave. I always carry with me, whenever I go to any farm, I always have hand sanitizer and baby wipes that I take with me. Because if you're patting animals, as I often tell kids, this is a famous line, animals don't use toilet paper, right? So you know what, we have to do all the hard work. It's so much fun to hold an animal, snuggle with an animal, have that connection. But when you are leaving, you want to make sure that you wash your hands as much as you can with soap and water. If soap and water is not available, then hand wipes and sanitizer are kind of like the next best thing. Another thing that I tell people all the time is if you're going to go to a farm, it's always a great idea. You know what? Eat your lunch before you go. Have your snacks before you interact with the animals. Some things people understand, like salmonella, for example. Salmonella is often inside of chickens. Even healthy chickens can have salmonella. And if you're interacting with them, their feathers, things like that, you can actually get salmonella yourself. I know, for example, that unfortunately, I brought home a pig parasite one time to my very young daughter, who had some pretty good stomach distress for a while after that. So another thing to consider is that when you're going out into the world and you're interacting with farm animals especially, you also don't want to bring any of that stuff back to your home, right? So if you have backyard chickens, nowadays a lot of people have like backyard goats are kind of like all the trend, which we really support because it's just, again, it's another way for people to get connected to agriculture. So people are doing goat yoga, people are doing all these experiences that, maybe 10, 20 years ago, most people in farming maybe would have thought were pretty silly. These are a great way for people who may not have another opportunity to learn more about agriculture. And so one thing is you don't want to.
But there's a right way to do it, isn't there?
There is. I mean, there is a right way to do it. And I think, one of the things is that there are definitely like farms who they're doing a lot of these agricultural, like some people call it agrotainment. So it's like agricultural entertainment. And a lot of places are doing it with an educational spin. And so I think the thing is that it's always a good idea. I mean, especially that's part of the reason why Extension and 4-H is also here, because we can recommend places if people want to have some of these experiences. We can tell you who's doing like these experiences like correctly and also like doing right by the livestock that they work with. So another thing to think about too is like, for example, I have chickens at home and I also have sheep. I have sheep that I own. And so oftentimes for my job, I might be going out to other farms. And then what I can do is I can unknowingly bring pathogens back to my own animals. So another thing that people should take into consideration is like their boots, for example, right? So you got these like nasty boots that you're wearing all around. You don't think about it, but all those little ridges and lines, those are a great spot for like mud and dirt and disease to kind of hang out inside. So if you are going to be going to multiple farms and coming home to your own chickens, a couple things you can do is, number one, you can have a pair of boots that you wear out to other people's farms and other farms only, and then keep a pair of boots dedicated to just your backyard animals. If you're jumping in between back and forth, it is recommended that you have like a rubber boot versus like a leather boot, because if I try to clean these boots with like chemicals, I'm going to just destroy them. So with a pair of rubber boots, and you can get these pretty inexpensively at like a Walmart, Target kind of thing, when you're coming home, it's always a great idea to scrape off with like a brush anything that you can see visually. And then disinfect it. So a couple things you can use like Lysol wipes and Lysol. You can use a bleach solution. You obviously don't want to use Lysol and bleach together. They're not friends. When you mix those two things together, you can cause some trouble. You can even buy like sprays on the market. This is something called Razor. There's other brands of disinfectant sprays you can kind of spray on your boots afterwards. So, these are just kind of, like I say, it might seem extreme, but now, like, as people are thinking more about a disease like COVID, for example, so, one of the ways that COVID might be impacting people is through an animal. That's one of the ways that potentially people have been exposed to it. We're thinking more and more about, making sure that we keep animal pathogens in animals and not in people. So again, we do have this highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak, which everyone's really hopeful that once the temperatures rise, it looks as though this virus doesn't do well with like hot temperatures, that our birds will be safe here in Massachusetts. But then again, just other things to think about. Like I say, like there's other things like salmonella, for example, is very common, or parasites, unfortunately, that you can unknowingly bring home from a fun day on the farm. So we really want people to explore all the farms here in southeastern Massachusetts. We have some really awesome farms that we want people to learn more about, and we want them to support them financially by buying as many local agricultural products as possible. And again,
that's very important.
It is very important because, you know what, again, the only way that we're going to be, preserving these farms is if we support them. And again, too, if you have like a child who is always begging you to go on these adventures and find these farms and get connected to livestock or just even agriculture overall, 4-H is definitely a great organization to think about because we do have such a wide variety of programming. I say we're both out of Plymouth County, and we have a number of different clubs ranging from, gardening to sheep to goats, dogs, really. So again, we are here to connect. We're always here to be a resource. We're very easy to find online. If you just Google Plymouth County 4-H, you'll find our website, and you can always reach out to myself or to Cathy for more information about this stuff.
Cathy, you brought a friend today.
I did. This is Merida. Merida is a certified therapy dog. Therapy dogs go into facilities to make people feel better. She is not a service dog, so she doesn't do a job for me. And Merida here she's being a little whiny because she wants to be petted. And she goes into schools to teach about dog safety. And that is part of what we teach in 4-H. Started out
You're a
with
nice girl.
the dog program. Merida, shush, you're being rude. Thank you. It started out through the dog program. In the 4-H dog program, the dogs are trained by the youth who own them, and they learn about breeds, they learn about first aid, anatomy and physiology of the dog. They learn how to train the dog, and one of the more important things that we teach them is dog safety. So that I've expanded that to bring it right to the schools so that we can teach youth how to be safe around dogs. Because a recent study has shown that 1 hour of dog safety decreases risky behavior in children by 80%. And as we've probably read, maybe online or on the TV, there's over 4.5 million dog bites reported a year. And half of that is to children. So our goal is to make it zero in Plymouth County.
And throughout the state.
And through everywhere, yes. And that's why I wrote this book.
This is another wonderful book. Talk about your book.
So this is called Please Don't Hug Me. And of course it features Merida here. It is only $11 available on Amazon, and all of the money benefits 4-H. It tells you about how dogs don't like hugs. Did you know that dogs don't like hugs? It is one of the things that people don't realize. Think about it, and this is something we teach in the schools. When a child comes up to you, another child, if they were to wrap themselves around their neck, you can't get away, and that's a very sensitive area. When we wrap ourselves around our dog's neck, they can't get away, and they don't like it, but they will tolerate it with their owners for a while, and then they're going to give us a sign that they're not happy. And that's what I teach in the schools. So we'll teach the dog looks away when he doesn't like what you're doing, or he shows the whites of his eyes, and Merida will do all of that on command so that the kids can see it firsthand just what it looks like when the dog gives you a whale eye.
This is an interesting program.
It is. It's a passion.
So how did you get involved?
How did I get involved in the dog safety?
In dog safety.
Well, I was walking my other dog, and we were attacked by a dog that the owner did not understand the instincts of that breed, and they didn't train it, they didn't socialize it, and they just didn't understand how to care for it. So it came out, it killed my other dog, unfortunately. She succumbed to her wounds. And I realized that we need to start teaching people about dog behavior so they understand that these are not furry people in little pajamas. They are a complete other species with other behaviors and characteristics. And that was how it started. And I wanted to start with children because that's what I do.
And you go into schools.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Just last week we were in a school, we taught 3rd and 4th graders in this school, 232 kids in a gym. I brought a couple of therapy dog friends of different breeds, and we discussed what breeds were made for, what their purposes were, and how when we choose a dog, we choose the right breed for our family and what our family characteristics are. So, for example, a herding breed like Merida, she is a collie. They're usually active, they're very intelligent, and they need exercise and structure and training. If you want to just lay on the couch and do nothing, you don't want to go get a Malinois. So we teach those kind of things. Then we teach the children to recognize that they shouldn't be laying on their dogs, or why you don't take the dog and hold him like this and stare at his face, why the dogs don't like that. We also teach them to recognize how to read your dog. So if my dog looks away from me, it means he's tired of what we're doing. He's trying to break off from me. He's giving me a sign. Please stop. Then I'll say, and if you don't catch that, he might yawn. A lot of people don't realize the yawn is a source of stress in dogs. So I have the children yawn at each other and show their teeth. And I'll say, why do you think they yawn? And most of the kids get it right. When they actually put themselves in the dog's position, they get it right. And then I'll say to them, well, do you think you're going to go lay on your dogs now when you go home? And most of them say, no, I want to be my dog's best friend.
And that's important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Merida here is great at teaching all of that. She's gentle, she's calm, and she loves kids.
Do you take her to nursing homes and facilities?
I used to, but that's her favorite group of people to be with are usually kids. So my older dog preferred to be with older people, and this dog here, she really loves kids. She has been to nursing homes, but she's a little active sometimes for them. She's very exuberant.
How old is she?
She'll be 7 in May. Yes.
A rough collie.
It's a rough collie. We also go over the animal adaptations of the dogs in school. Part of the framework for Massachusetts curriculum framework has certain grades reading about animal adaptations. So I use the dog as the perfectly adapted animal with 340 different breeds created for a purpose. It's great to use for that as a teaching tool. And then I can sneak in dog safety. So they'll learn that the rough collie, for example, came from Scotland, and their purpose was to be on the highlands of Scotland and herd the sheep, but more importantly, watch over them and then go and get them. So they're not as active as, say, a border collie. And if you wanted a collie type, you might want a rough collie over a border collie if you're not a jogger or a real active type.
Very interesting.
And that's things they all learn if they're in a 4-H club, a dog club.
Talk about the importance of 4-H.
So 4-H, I found out firsthand how it was important. As a child, I was in 4-H, and my daughter grew up in 4-H. I see kids grow. They learn to be leaders. They learn to be responsible. They learn to care for their dogs in the dog program or their sheep in a sheep club. They learn how to give speeches. And I'll tell you, my daughter is in college, and she had to give a presentation for one of her research projects. The professor came up to her afterwards and said, how did you learn to give such a great speech? Her response was 4-H. And he said, I can always tell those 4-H kids because they know how to give a speech. And that is one of the most important things that we do teach them.
Yeah, and 4-H, like for example, my parents both grew up in Boston, in the city. And so when people meet me, they think that I must have grown up on a farm and that this has been my entire life because I'm so passionate about agriculture. But, really, those opportunities, those farm families that have like deep roots in agriculture, it's not as common, especially in Massachusetts. A lot of farmers have unfortunately had to make the tough choice because the land value is so high here to sell off their farms. And so we need to try to attract different people to agriculture. And so, for example, I stumbled into 4-H summer camp as a child, and that completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. And that's where I learned about agriculture, and I raised a pig through 4-H summer camp. And, I just returned back from last week. I was at the National Agriculture Summit run by 4-H in Washington, D.C., and I got to meet about 300 youth, all teens, who are learning more about agriculture and more about agricultural careers. And, it's so fascinating to see some of the job options for these youth. So for example, there are youth that are learning about drones, like using drones to go over farms to then specifically pinpoint which plants need fertilizer, which ones need more or less water. So then we can better use our limited resources to grow more food. So this is something that you never would have even thought about in agriculture or as a job or as a career. And 4-H is an opportunity to open these doors and so many other doors. Cathy and I have both been leaders for a number of years, and over the almost 20 years that I've worked in 4-H, some of the kids that I've worked with have gone into farming. Other kids have gone into like teaching, agricultural education. 2 of my students are either done with vet school or in vet school now. So, this is the thing, is that like we're trying to shepherd along, these youth to become curious leaders. Like they might not become farmers or work in agriculture, but many of them, they stay in career fields where they are really like the next generation of like scientists, leaders, and curious people who are going to be.
In those capacities, there is a lot of alignment.
There is, yeah. I mean, there's, that's the thing too, is that I always tell the kids too in my 4-H club, even if you don't grow up to become a farmer, you're going to be educated about it. You're going to understand the value of agriculture, because I think a lot of people, again, less than 2% of Americans work in agriculture. So that means that 2% of Americans are growing all the food for the other 98% of people in our country, and then even a lot of food that's being shipped to other countries. So if you think about that, that's such a small, dedicated, vital part of our country. And so we really have to do everything that we can to try to support that.
Now you have a sheep club.
I do, yeah. So I have 16.
What's the name of it?
My sheep club is called Soul Kids because we're based out of Soul Homestead Education Center in Middleborough. And we have 16 sheep. We do learn about other livestock, but we primarily focus on Shetland sheep, which are actually another Scottish breed. And they're technically a dual purpose, but they're known more for their outstanding quality of wool. And so we raise them, the kids show them. They're also used at the Soul Homestead for their educational programs. And then we sell sheep, we sell wool, and some of the sheep do go on to become dinner for some people. They go on to become lamb, which is very delicious.
Okay. And what about your group?
My group is a dog club, and they learn how to train their dogs to be therapy dogs. If the dog is not suited for therapy work, they'll learn how to train them to do just community service. We use the dogs for community service. We'll often bring them to a local facility such as Tractor Supply to tell them all about dog safety, responsible dog ownership, why you should pick up their feces and not leave it laying around because of the diseases it could promote, and just it's being a bad neighbor.
Do you talk about the different breeds?
We do. Every year, a dog club has to go over a different group from American Kennel Club. They'll go over, like, for example, this year is working group. So they're learning about the Newfoundland or the Leonberger or the Rottweiler. And they learn where the dog came from, what its purpose is, some of the diseases that are common with that dog, various just tidbits of knowledge. All of us have watched Crufts or Westminster on TV. I tell you, these 4-H kids in the dog program could be very good announcers. They'll also be able to tell whether that dog, what it needs. Does it need exercise? Is it something that needs mental stimulation? Is it a good dog to have with children? So those are some of the things. And then they focus on anatomy. They learn where the bones are. They learn about diseases, vaccinations, different ailments, such as hip dysplasia or collie eye anomaly. They learn all those things, and then they learn how to take care of the dog.
And one thing I would say too is that, both Cathy and I, we do this job now. This is our job. This is our career, is to educate people about agriculture and, dogs and things like that. But both of us got into 4-H as volunteers. And that's one of the really, really fascinating things about 4-H is that, first of all, Extension started with Abraham Lincoln. And part of the reason why Extension exists is because what was happening was farmers weren't really able to themselves learn new technology that was like being discovered at these land-grant universities. And then oftentimes their children had to stay on the farm. They weren't able to go to school themselves. So Extension was created to basically have people that were able to take that education from the college and extend it out into the community, right? So we are able to do so many great things in our jobs, but then 4-H, as part of Extension, it's so critical. It's so based on volunteers. And so there are adults that will step up and they will lead these clubs. And then we're there to support them with curriculum, answer questions, help them out with different events. But it's so amazing that adults would take their time to really cultivate, these kids through this program. And we are very fortunate to have some great volunteers, but we're always looking for more volunteers. And we get a lot of adults who think, oh, I didn't grow up on a farm. I could never be a 4-H volunteer. Like, what could I possibly add? And one of the things that I will say is that what's so great about 4-H is, again, it could be a sewing club, it could be a cooking club, it could be science.
You could do a reporting club.
Exactly, a communications club. I mean, so the thing is that it's really quite unique, because pretty much anybody with any background that wants to, again, be dedicated and support a group of kids can step up as a volunteer. And then, of course, we work with those adults for training, background checks, things like that. But again, 4-H is really only as strong as the volunteers who step up to work with us.
In Plymouth County alone, we have over 125 volunteers to run our 40 clubs. So we rely on them very heavily, and we're very appreciative of
All
that.
throughout the South Shore.
Yes, that's throughout Plymouth County alone. So they are trained. We have trainings for them. We offer them curriculum. We offer them supplies. Joanne Fabrics has been very generous to us in offering up some
Where are the
supplies.
two of you based?
Our
Plymouth.
office is based in Plymouth. Yeah, so we actually have a fantastic location. We're located right next to Plymouth North High School, the Registry of Deeds, the courthouse, the Beth Israel Hospital, and we also just recently took ownership of approximately 15 acres from the prison farm that's there as well. So then
I know where that is, yeah.
Yeah, so what's really kind of exciting going on in our county is that we recently took ownership of a small piece of that farm so that more people from our county can interact with that farm landscape. And we received some very generous grants last year from the state of Massachusetts to put up a greenhouse. And so we're just beginning some of the programming through the greenhouse. This summer, we'll be running a program called Careers in Agriculture. For any teen who's in Plymouth County can join that program, and they can join us on the farm to grow vegetables. These vegetables will be donated to, right across the street is the Plymouth Center for Active Living, and they already have a program called Free Food Fridays, which our teens will be growing vegetables to bring over to the Center for Active Living. And we're also going to be doing weekly field trips to other farms across Plymouth County so that teens who maybe are like, oh, I would never be a farmer, they can see and interact with like a whole different landscape of agriculture.
I am being told, unfortunately, that both of you, who have done a lovely job, and I'm very happy to have had you on the show, that we're coming to an end. But I'm sure you'd like to come back.
Oh,
I'd love
definitely,
to
yeah.
have you come back.
Yes, we have other programs that we could share with you as
And
well.
I'm sure that they would be very welcomed. Thank you for joining us on Fur, Fins, and Feathers, and stay well and happy spring.